I've just had to. Yeah, my apologies, everybody. What I've had to do is join via my phone so that I can be able to host this session. Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I hope you're all doing well, and welcome to Cycle 5. This is going to be an exciting cycle, and it's going to be around investor readiness. I'm not sure how many of you have been able to the email that BimaLab implementation team sent through on how Cycle 5 is going to run. But I think the most important thing that we all need to remember is that you're going to have a lot of office hours happening through the month of October. And instead of having group workshops, you're going to break into individual workshops. And this is to prepare you for your investor pitches that are going to happen at the end of this program in November. So I hope you're all excited and looking forward to Cycle 5. To kick us off with Cycle 5, we're going to have Elias Omondi, and he's going to speak on the topic on innovating to scale. And Elias obviously is very excited around innovation, hence the BimaLab Africa program. And I think for me, from a personal perspective, I believe the power of technology creates opportunities for us to scale. It has no boundaries, but it is important that we are cognizant of the fact that if we have the power of technology and we're innovating from a technology perspective, how do we make sure whatever we are innovating is able to scale beyond boundaries, and we're able to see the return on investment and the impact of what we are innovating for. So I don't want to talk too much. I want to introduce Elias and give him the floor so he can talk us through this. I mean, I think for me, Elias is like an onion. You just keep peeling and finding out, new things about him. So I can't wait to hear him speak on this topic and learn a few things from him. Elias, the floor is yours, if you're ready. Elias, are you with us? Yes, I can see you're there.
Yes, right.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you. And it's a pleasure again to speak to all of you. One of the key things that I usually say, technology has a way of dealing with people, and it has kind of dealt with you, Laura.
Not put me down.
Yeah, so we really wanted to see you, but unfortunately, it has decided that we are not going to see you. So apologies on its behalf. Right. So today we are going to talk about innovating to scale. And, all of us really, when you are innovating something or you're developing a product or any solution, the key component that makes you really appreciate what you do is basically that particular solution getting to a particular scale. And today I just want to talk about innovating to scale. I'm a principal innovation for resilience at FSD Africa, and our work basically is to make finance work for Africa's future. We've been privileged to be running this particular program, the BimaLab program, for the last 3 years, and we've kind of seen incredible progress, particularly to a number of innovators really coming up with what I'll call groundbreaking solutions, that some of them have really managed to get to a particular level of scale. So this evening, I'll kind of share my screen because I want us to go through a couple of slides basically on this particular topic, and then we should be able to kind of get aligned to what basically this particular topic entails. So if you can see my screen, let me know.
Elias?
We can see a screen.
Is it on a full?
Oh.
Let me just make sure. Again, technology has started acting up. So just a moment. yeah, this is why you need always to give it up for tech. It always has its ways of dealing with people. So let me see whether now it will be able to work. So I'm trying to get it on full screen. Great. So hope now you can see it on full screen, right?
Yes, we can.
Right. So I want to talk about innovating for scale. And the reason why this is important is because that if you look at where we are trying to innovate, particularly the insurance industry, this is an industry that is not really exciting. I think if you kind of place insurance industry with all the other industries, I don't know what part of the numbers it will basically play. But the key thing is that it kind of holds a very critical components for the entire financial sector, but also just communities and businesses. So today, my topic will be on how then do you innovate to scale or for scale, because this is critically important for any innovator to basically get to a particular level of scale. So I want kind of just to go through some of the key pointers that you need to look at, then kind of ask ourselves whether the part of the solutions that we are developing is aligning to some of these principles that basically an entity should take when they're looking at how they going to create a sustaining innovation or a disruptive innovation, or basically enabling their businesses to maintain that particular value to their customers. Now, this is the reality, and I know this has been spoken so many times. In fact, we always talk about the protection gap in Africa. We always talk about how deep and persistent it is, and how then this particular issue really forces painful choices to families. And in terms of insurance penetration, the world average, we are 50% down or out of the world average, which is something that we always need to think about, given that Africa is arguably the most unprotected and the most exposed continent. And ironically, then this becomes the real picture, whereby get that less than 50% of the GDP is basically contributed through insurance. In terms of per capita, basically we are 11 times down compared to the world average. So that basically tells you that there's a lot of work that we really need to do as a community that is looking at solving some of these particular challenges. And this is the reality when it comes to the challenges within the risk transfer markets. So you are basically building a solution for a market that has a weak demand for your solution. No one is really interested in purchasing insurance. There are various issues that have been raised around that, around affordability, issues around awareness, and that's the reality. Be it on the micro, be it on the meso, be it on the macro side. So there's weak demand for your solution, and people might not really be looking for your solution in the long run. So you basically have to push your solution through their throats. In fact, people say that insurance is not bought. It's basically, it has to be sold. You have basically to sell it to somebody. Somebody will not just wake up in the morning and say, okay, fine, I feel like I need insurance products for the next 5 years. You really have to convince them. And most of the time you'll get that the agencies or insurance agents might even end up giving some features that do not exist in a particular product, just basically to get these particular customers aligned. Also, in terms of the supply, there is low quality supply. These particular products are not making sense to the people and even to the companies themselves. There are low margins, there are issues around and all this has kind of been cited in so many other reports, including basically getting the big brother, who is the regulator, kind of creating great hindrances and blocks towards people getting to the long end of purchasing these particular products. So the biggest question that comes in mind, then what is InsurTech? And in very simple terms, somebody will say that InsurTech is using technology to sell insurance, or basically using technology to distribute, or basically having a technological way of dealing with solutions that are provided within an insurance industry. Now, over time, I've been thinking about this component of InsurTech, and if you look at where we are as a continent and where the entire world is when it comes to InsurTech, we always think about bringing two things together. You bring the best technology, you bring the best insurance knowledge, and kind of mix all that, and you will be able to get something that people will be talking about. And most of the time, when we mix these two things, it seems like this particular product mostly resonates with the person that is building. So you kind of forget about anything outside the ecosystem of technology and insurance. You kind of bring these two things together, and voila, you get something that you think that will kind of address the entire problems that people have been facing in the world around insurance. But InsurTech, basically, it's about two things. It's about people and the architecture. So it kind of looks at the people needs, and people would be people that are working within an InsurTech company, people that are working within an insurance company, people that are within the insurance ecosystem. And within that, then also look at its architecture. They need to have a balance between what level of technology do you need to bring into the picture, what level of insurance do you need to bring into the picture, and kind of get the right architecture around basically building the solution that will be able to address the problems that these people are facing. In reality, if you look at why InsurTech space will basically increase, is that the average age of an insurance agent is increasing. In fact, nowadays, no young person wants to be an insurance agent. If you basically talk to the incumbent companies and got the average age of agents now that they're using to basically distribute and to get to the market, you'll realize that the number of young people that are joining the insurance agency space have been decreasing in a very high manner. So that basically presents a very big opportunity for InsurTechs, whereby, if we can be able to address the average age, and if you look at the continent, the African continent, the median age is around 19%. Basically we need to develop products that will resonate with these young people, and they don't expect really somebody to be talking to them about the solution. The second thing is the data is always increasing. There's an abundance of data, and this is something that the InsurTech community or the InsurTech companies can be able to take advantage on. So if we can use the power of data to harness the solutions that this particular continent or the world requires, then we should be able to, in a way, start building our innovations to scale. The back-end technology of incumbents are still poor, and there's a reason why that is the case. Because even from the InsurTech perspective, they tend to try and just improve what incumbents are not doing. It's not basically totally to disrupt what incumbents are doing. And that might not really push you towards innovating to scale, because if you are basically becoming somebody that looks at a few improvements that have to be done by incumbents, so you are in a way just innovating around a poor system that is not properly disruptive to change the way the ecosystem would really address people's problem. And lastly is issues around customer expectations that are always changing. And that basically brings to the fact that there are different types of innovations or innovation that we really need to think about as an industry. So I usually say that the InsurTech story is something that would change the way we look at things. So if you're a football fan, InsurTech will kind of change the way we look at soccer to football. So if you watch football, there's always certain ways of playing it. There's a structure of playing it. There's certain rules that you really need to adhere. And the only thing that these guys try to protect are only their legs. So you'll be able to gather there's a shin guard or on the leg. But the way the InsurTech story will kind of change the way we look at the insurance industry will be more like going through American football. So there will be no mercy. It's basically I hit you, I hit you, you hit me, because the industry has become so dormant in a way whereby you would basically even guess where the industry will be tomorrow. But the way the insurtechs are coming into the story, then it will mean that the entire component on how the insurance business will be changing will be so dynamic, will be so agile, and also it will be so, I would say, dramatic in ways in which some of these particular components will move. So just have in mind that even if all of us are pushing to really get insurtechs coming into the space, it will not be struck and protective and well harnessed the way the industry used to be. It will be more like, are you ready to get hit, and are you ready to run with that particular ball in a way that you basically get to the finish line. Now, most of the time we say that insurance, or you kind of say that cryptocurrency is complex. I want to tell you that insurance is more complex than cryptocurrency. If you just look at the market share of Bitcoin as a percentage of the GDP and compare with a couple of countries in the world and a couple of countries in Africa, you'll get that the GDP contribution of Bitcoin to the economy is even higher than insurance. And remember, Bitcoin just started a few years ago. So insurance penetration is lower than the cryptocurrency market share. So the biggest question is, does it mean that people do not understand insurance and tend to go for something that is so complex, such as cryptocurrency? If today you went to people and you'll be able to realize that even those people that haven't really been able to understand the financial architecture of different components, you'll be able to see that in one or the other, some people talk about Bitcoins and talk about cryptocurrency. And this is something that we need to be worried about, because there is no need of basically saying that insurance is more complex. If people can really go ahead and embrace cryptocurrency in different countries in the world. So for instance, if you look at Kenya, the cryptocurrency growth is around, GDP is around 2.5. And if you look at the insurance penetration, which is on this other side, on the green side, is 2.3. So again, you'll be able to see that cryptocurrency has just surpassed insurance in Kenya. If you look at a country like Nigeria, the penetration is around 0.3%. But if you look at the way cryptocurrency has kind of been embraced in Nigeria, is already at 3.5%. So does it mean that insurance is too complex? Basically, it means that we have not really managed to get the right touch on what these particular customers need. So we need to kind of create the future, and the key element is that even if we look at the existing protocols that you might be aware about, you can basically break the insurance office, or if you went to an incumbent company, you can break the operations into 3 levels. You'll get that there's a front office, there's the middle office, and also there's a back office. Now, most of the innovations within the insurance space have kind of ended up addressing the front office. And these are the challenges, because if you look at the insurance companies, the incumbents themselves, they are quick also to innovate on the front office. So in terms of the growth strategy, in terms of the marketing, in terms of the sales, in terms of the products, there's a lot of innovation from the front office side, whereby it's more of customer facing. But there are two key things that, needs also to be thought about much clearly and more in a more agile manner when it comes to the front office. That is the innovation and the channels. And you'll be able to see that I've kind of put those elements in red. So if we could be able to extend our innovations beyond just marketing, beyond distribution, beyond product, and kind of look at how then we can embrace innovation and the devising ways of distribution in terms of channels, then we can be able to create that particular future that this particular industry needs. Now, if you come to the middle office, this is somewhere no one really wants to innovate. So, get that the middle office, and this is whereby you get issues such as claims, how the claims management ecosystem is done, how information is kept. You'll be able to get that the middle office is totally undisrupted. So how then do we ensure that the operations, the technology, the information is kind of evolving to make the insurance industry more interesting? Now, if you go to the back office, the key thing is that we've kind of managed to address issues around human resources, issues around finance, but in terms of risk underwriting, risk management, in terms of assets, in terms of claims management, all these components are still not well addressed when it comes to innovating for the future. So there are various elements that really needs to work out, so that if we talk about an innovation that is from top to end or end to end, then it has to cut across some of the key elements that we are highlighting in this particular graph or this particular diagram. So the key thing that basically comes in mind is then what is innovation and why is it really important? Now, most of the time innovation can be defined as a process in which people adapt to maybe a well-known product. So in a way that, I already have this particular product, how then do we ensure that the adaptations around it? Or basically it's a way by creating something new that changes the way clients view or experience a product. So you can basically make people to adapt to a particular product or create something new that will change the way they view or experience products. So there are two elements around this. There's adaptive element in terms of the product, and also there's an experiential element around the product. The key thing is that most of the time when we think about innovation, we kind of try to fit the customer.
Nĩ podcast gũthikĩrĩria andũ ũrĩa marakĩaria ũhoro wa innovation.
Yeah, to fit the customer around what key elements that this particular customer would be talking about. So there's a way that we really need to balance some of these particular components. Now, if you look at then what types of innovations are, and this is something that, most of the time companies might not clearly know what maybe their innovation is. So there's what we call product-driven innovation or customer-focused innovation. And product centricity and customer centricity are two different components around innovation. So the key thing as an innovator that most of the time you need to ask yourself is my solution product-centric innovation, or is it customer-centric innovation? And if you look at most of the time when we talk about customer-centric organizations, they focus on meeting the needs of their customers. The key component for customer-centric innovations is basically my customer becomes first. And I'll give you an example. If you look at the way Amazon has been doing its business over the last couple of years, you'll be able to see that they kind of value customer centricity a lot. Now, product-centric innovators are also there. So think about Apple. Apple is totally product-centric. Is that they emphasize in delivering high-quality products that do meet their customer needs. And for instance, right now we are talking about I don't know, iPhone, maybe 15 or 16. I don't have an iPhone, so maybe I'm just guessing, and maybe the iPhone guys are in the room. So the key thing is that, you kind of look at the quality of products that are basically being developed over time. Now, when it comes to insurance, the biggest pain point has been from the level of customers. Customers don't like insurance at all. And most of the time, they don't really see the need of purchasing a product that will not really meet their customer needs, and also basically enable them to feel the value of having that particular product. Over time, the key question is, if this particular solution am I developing, is it product driven or is it customer focused? And definitely, this the cutting point will be at which these two elements meet. So if you can be able to balance these two particular elements as an innovator, then you are easily able to innovate to scale, because you'll be having some elements of customer centricity, you'll having some elements of product centricity, and that kind of pushes the products toward the scale that this particular solution is looking at. Now, the reason why then we still have a bigger challenge within the insurance industry is that most of the time, most of the innovations that have been developed over time, it's not that the innovations are not there. There are a lot of innovations that they're already existing within the insurance market space. But these particular innovations are highly product driven. We haven't really managed to kind of bring some bits and pieces of customer focus within the innovations. So when you're looking at all this, you need to think about customer centric, you need to think about product centric. And when a company is product centric and the innovations around product centricity, all its goals and decisions revolve around the product. So there are certain weaknesses around that, because some customers, you might be too much focused on the product and kind of leave the customers outside the value chain of what basically you are creating. On top of that, then, when you talk about customer-centric approach, basically it means that all the goals and decisions revolve around customers and offering tailored solutions to their problems. So, if you look at customer centricity innovation, it will mean that at the end, you'll have to refine your product. So it's not product-led, it is customer-led towards the product development. So customer-centric approaches also, you'll be able to see that there is a lot of customer satisfaction. In fact, if you look at McKinsey, they say that product-centric companies see a growth of around 6 to 9% higher revenue compared to their peers. So, if you are competing with product-centric companies, then there's always that revenue growth that is always experienced. Now, if it's customer centricity, the focus kind of sees the customer experience, whereby you will be able to see that mostly around 60% of them will be more profitable than those companies that are not customer centric. So there's a clear way, and this is something that has to be balanced. A company must think about the sweet spot between product centricity and customer centricity, and ensure that there's a well-balanced play when you are developing these particular solutions to enable you to innovate to scale. And the strategy, then the key component of the strategy will be to think about how do we create value for customers, which is a common theme around both product and customer centricity. And basically it means that, organizations or people that are looking into developing these particular solutions must be innovative to stay competitive and to make the customers happy. So the issue is that you have to make your customers happy, you have to remain competitive, and at the end of the day, then you really need to look at how then you develop profit. So there are three clear elements then has to be applied when it comes to the balancing out of customer and product centricity, because for you to get to that particular scale, don't overly focus on the product and forget the customer, but also don't overly focus on the customer and forget the product. The customer centric will, in one or the other, always take you back to the product and tell you, you know, this is the caliber of the customer and this is the product that they need. So in one or the other, you will be kind of pushed back to where you left your product innovation skills. So create value for customers, and this can be directly or indirectly. You know, there are various ways in which you can create the value indirectly, and this basically means that you can look at embedding your solution with other existing solutions that will be able to give clients value. You know, most of the time we look at insurance as just a component that will build resilient, and it kind of feels far-fetched when you collect premiums of a particular customer and tell him, like, you know, if this particular thing happens to you, then I'll be able to pay you. Some of these things might happen over a very long period of time. Some might not happen at all. So most of the time they ask themselves, what's the value really am I getting out of this particular creation of this particular product? So we need to look at ways in which we can create value, either directly or indirectly. There's need to innovate to stay ahead of the curve and meet the ever-growing expectation of your customer. And that basically means that you have to constantly innovate. If you are doing an innovation now and you've developed an innovation up to a particular level, you really need to think about the customer of the future. What will that particular customer be requiring? So that development has to be on the pipeline, so that when your customer gets to that point, you'll be able to know that already have a product that can address where I am as a customer. And that's why you'll get that if you are not innovating, then other competitors will come with those particular solutions. There is that shift to those companies that do address those particular needs. The other thing is constantly meet and exceed the needs of its customers. That is something that always needs to be done. And that this entails really complementing your business strategies with a needs analysis. So how then do you look at the needs of the customers? How do you basically focus towards building an ecosystem that will be quite customer-centric to address these particular needs that these particular customers are facing? And the way that you look at the need has to be highly addressed within two elements. So you get that most companies or most innovators do address what we call the latent pain. And, you know, this pain that is already there, people are too conversant with it. It has become unknown to them, and it doesn't really impact them as much as you think that it impacts them. So we need to push all this pain, the customer pain and the community pains, into what we call an active pain. And that brings two key elements that you need to think about. You need to think about the needs of those particular customers. You need to think about the cost of providing for that particular need. You need to think about the solution that has to be developed and the risk that you are putting yourself as an entity. Now, if you start the conversation, the need for the customer will always be at the top. And that because that is what you want to solve for. The next thing will be the cost. How much will this particular solution be costing to these particular customers as I address their needs? So that will kind of come at the second. Then the solution comes at, but you need to start thinking about how then do you start developing this solution. So the key thing is then how change, how do you bring that change? So you kind of bring in the needs of this customer. And, you know, over the last couple of months, you guys have been going through discovery session, visioning sessions, and that is something that will enable you to discover the needs of these customers. As you kind of unpack their needs, then you'll be able to see that the solution graph starts to grow, whereby you start evaluating the solution. And at that particular point is that the solution will kind of surpass the needs, because as you develop the solution, the needs have to drop in one or the other. The cost also start dropping, because, you know, you are coming up with ways that you are trying to solve that particular challenge. But as you kind of start developing the solution, which is on the second part, proof, solution, evaluation, and proof, then you'll get that the cost starts to go up. The key component, as the solution kind of develops over time, then there's always that risk that, you know, maybe people might not use it at all, or maybe it doesn't really solve the challenge that I'm trying to bring into the equation. So the key thing is then, how then do you balance this particular component out? So the solution graph grows up to that point, and it will kind of come to a point whereby there will be an intersection between the solution and the cost. You know, you'll be able to realize that the needs of the customer will kind of gradually decrease, and you'll get that the risk that the company will be facing in terms of growth and sustainability kind of will be increasing over time. And that's why it is always important to think about how then do I innovate to scale, because if these needs will hit to a particular point, then again, your active pain that you are trying to address becomes passive. And the question is then, you really need to always rediscover and in a way come up with a new innovative way in which the customer needs have kind of evolved and have changed over time. And this is a challenge, right? Because as you solve for those particular needs, these particular needs tend to diminish, and in one or the other, then the solution might really lose value over time. So you need to rediscover what are some of the challenges that the customers will be facing in the future, and that will enable you to constantly innovate and grow this particular space of innovating to scale. So when you think about all that, and when you kind of bring into the equation whereby, you know, we really have to innovate to scale, there's always a cycle. And most of the time when innovators are looking into developing solutions, there's a way we react. You get a challenge and you think of a response. And it can be very linear, whereby, you know, you come up with a challenge, then you quickly think about what would be the possible response. But for you to innovate to scale, there is need to kind of take what we call a purposeful detour. So in a way, then you kind of start uncovering the existing reality. It's not 1 is equals to 1 when it comes to solving or developing innovative components or mechanisms that will go towards scale. It's not 1 is equals to 1. It means that we have to take a purposeful detour. We have to uncover the existing realities. We have to co-create new ideas. We have to look at innovations. We have to look at ecologies, and then in a way go back to the response. And this can be a cycle that you can keep on repeating it over time. So it's not a one-way component. So as you kind of get back to the response, you kind of again go back to uncovering the realities, then kind of co-create, check on new ideas, look at innovations, and then go back to really addressing some of these particular ecologies. So some of key things that, you know, we might really need to do when it comes to, will I be able to innovate to scale? So there are two elements that basically comes in mind. Do I want to disrupt or do I want to sustain? And if you look at a number of solutions that you already existing, and this is even something that we are calling innovations, is that we end up just doing sustaining work as innovators. So you'll get that you look at the process of innovating to improve products and services for existing customers. I'm not saying that the world has to create new ones. Even if you are looking at targeting the existing customers, there's a particular problem that exists. And that's why I talked about earlier, latent and active pain. So if you are doing a sustaining innovation, you'll be, in a way, trying to address a latent pain problem. And that basically means that if you look at sustaining innovation, it basically defined as a process of innovating to improve products and services for existing customers. Now, the active pain then takes you to disruption. And that's where now we come up with what we call disruptive innovation. And when we talk about disruptive innovation, there are 3 critical components that, you know, you have to think about and you have to really be able to take it through your business your business strategy. So do you have an enabling technology? So it doesn't mean that your technology will remain where it was. So if today you are dealing with an innovation, or you have an innovation and your technology has remained the same, there's no improvement, you've never been challenged on that technology that it can do better, you've never seen the urge of making it an enabling technology, then you might be heading towards sustaining innovation. The other thing is the business model. And that's why when I talked about who an insurtech is, I talked about architecture. It's all about the balance. Do I really need a chief technology officer? Do I need a chief information officer? What is the culture around the chief technology officer and the chief info officer? Are they able to really quickly balance it out and create a model that will ensure that we give the rightful solution to the market? You will also be able to realize that some of the companies will always have one skill set. So you'll get that a company is just only develop. There are no business analysts. And what these developers do, they kind of get engrossed to the product, whereby they kind of shut their views on the market. So you tell them that this is a problem and I want to develop something around this. So they won't look at outside the ecology. And when I talked about taking a purposeful detour, they will not be able to kind of go through and covering the existing realities, co-creating ideas, looking at the ecology. They'll just say, okay, challenge, response. And that's it. But within this business model, then there's need to continuously go through that cyclic component. And the last thing is, then you need to think about your current value network. What network are you working with, and how then does that network provide value to you as a company, but also you as an innovator provide value to your network. And this is something that I've seen in the past, whereby insurtechs is, the insurance incumbent do not know what they do. They need us. And the insurance on the other side is that, by the way, I've been doing all these things and I've never seen any challenge. I've never been, in a way, disrupted. So why do I really need to use an insurtech on this? Because the coherent value network is not there. So when you develop disruptive innovation, then you need to have a clear coherent value network, whereby it is not only about you having the knowledge of providing a solution to the incumbent companies, but equally the incumbent company should be able to see, I see value in what this particular component or this particular solution will be addressing. So when we talk about then these two elements, and this is really, really important, is that a company that is looking at sustaining innovation will create better performing products to sell to higher profits to its best customers. And this is something that did happen, by the way. If you looked at a company like, I would say, the General Motors, General Motors was highly on sustaining innovation. They were creating vehicles that would be better performing, they would want to sell it for higher profits and to its best customers. And then what happened is Toyota happened. Now, Toyota started from what we call low value customers, and their model was highly disruptive, because they looked at, we are a company that is focusing on fewer resources. We are focusing on moving to upmarket. And maybe we can look at ways in which we can address some of the challenges that are there. So you'll get that they started with some brands of vehicles that are not SUVs. You would not really think that they would be of great importance to a particular market. But over time, we've seen they are doing what we call now high valued vehicles. And there's always a particular point where disruptive innovation will hit the sustaining innovation graph. And once it hits that particular point, then it will kind of shift the best customers. This low company, the company that was looking for customers were basically low income customers or customers that were in that particular area that were lower market. So there are two ends of it. Either targeting the low end disruption, where a company uses low cost business model to enter the bottom of the existing market and claim a segment. And over time, as you kind of claim that segment, as you improve that value, then you will get to that particular point whereby you can basically hit to the best customers. The other thing is with the market, the new market disruption. And I can give you an example. So there was, and maybe all of you have heard of Intel. They do computer processors. So there was a time when Intel had that there was a company that was looking into developing computer processors, and this company was AMD. So AMD realized that Intel, their processors were for the best customers, for the better perform. So they were doing a better performing product, higher profits, and for its best customers. But always you realize that there are those people that couldn't afford computers. So AMD came into the market, and AMD and Cyrix came into the market. And the key thing that they wanted to do was, okay, fine, we are going to develop processors that are cheaper, that you can be able to get a very cheap computer and all that. So immediately when they hit the market, then the Intel company had to quickly think about their model, because they realized that there is this particular company that has come to the low end disruption. And immediately then they came up with a cheaper version of a processor. And maybe you will be able to see that nowadays there's a processor called Celeron. So they knew that, okay, fine, we will still want to sustain our innovations by developing Intel processors, but we can develop Celeron. So they developed Celeron to basically go to the bottom market and claim that particular segment, because they knew if these clients will use Celeron over time, they'll realize that this processor I'm using, I need to maybe upgrade it to Intel 3, Intel 4, Intel 5. Right now we're even talking about Core i7, and all that. But they knew if we are able to go to the low end disruption, then we should be able to basically move with these customers over time. So companies that did react quickly, and maybe insurance companies might not really see the need of the low end disruption. For you as an insurtech, then the key thing is basically what you'll be able to do is basically creating a new market disruption, whereby you create a new market segment in the existing market by catering for that underserved customer base. And over time, when you graduate with these customers over time, you'll get that your disruption hits the sustaining, and that's basically kind of pushes you towards innovating for scale. So very good examples and this is something that has happened. So if you look at the market cover for Toyota right now, it started very low. The Ford brand was always on top of Toyota, but as kind of they realized that let's go to the low end disrupt, let's create a new market for some cars that are not really expensive, then they started now building bigger USVs, and you'll get that now even the best customers that maybe Ford were looking at are nowadays even driving some of these Toyota cars and so forth. So ideally, this is something that also you need to think about as an innovator if you want to innovate to scale. And that is basically what I was talking about here. So new entrants, and most of the time, you'll get that the best disruptors are usually frustrated ex-employees of incumbents with little or nothing to lose when they enter the market. It might be a new person like you guys that are in this particular call that have nothing to lose and they want to get into the market. They start small, and most of the time you'll be able to see that, you know, people don't see you as a threat, you know, and that's basically what happened. Ford did not see Toyota as a threat. You know, these guys are just doing cheap vehicles, as we are doing top range vehicles and so forth. But as these guys disrupted the lower end market, and then they realized that, you know, we can always upgrade our product to that particular point whereby we can really push out the sustaining innovator of the pack. So the key question is that your innovations has to look at new customers, it has to look at new markets, and even if it starts small and insignificant, then you always need to think about the future. What is the future? Can we mature? Can we make the market be more mature and kind of make inroads to the area that the incumbents are playing, and basically have them for lunch or have their lunch? So you might not have their lunch now, and you might not be able to beat them out of sustaining innovation curve. So even if you try and improve their products now, they can always do that better because they have the resources, they have everything that they need to do to basically get on top of you. But if you can look at the customer, you can create new markets, you can create a new segment, then it will be small and not that significant. But over time, then it matures and basically gets to that particular point when we talk about sustaining innovations. So some of the scaling principles, and this is something that is key for all of us. You have to discover pain points and solve for unmet needs. And that, you know, you don't really need to look at latent pain. You need to look at the active pain points. And we talk about active pain points, it will mean that you have to rediscover your customers every day, every time, and think about what will be their next pain point. The second thing is seeing and designing for the bigger picture. Most of the time, if you are designing for a very small fit in terms of the solution, then enabling that towards scale becomes a very big issue. So it will be important to look at how then your solution is designed for the bigger picture and for the bigger fit when it comes to customers. There's need also for strategic partnerships. You know, ideally, we talked about coherent value network. So are we able to really know who are these partners that we can work with to ensure that value is well maintained? Talent and learning, and I talk about InsurTech not only being about technology and insurance, it's all about people, it's all about the architecture. How then do you balance your talent architecture? How do you balance your learning architecture towards building a scalable solution for the market? The other thing is that, you know, you have to engage with the regulator in an open way. You know, the best way of really getting yourself within the ecosystem is that don't fight your regulator. Don't fight your regulator if you want to scale or innovate to scale. Don't consider your regulator as an enemy. It will basically, if you are not open to your regulator around your innovation, if you kind of try and fight with your regulator, it will cost you two things. It will cost you time. And when it costs you time, that basically translates to money. So engage with your regulator in an open way, kind of be able to be very transparent to the innovation. If there's something that you believe that is going to hurt the customer, tell the regulator. You know, most of the time we try and hide bad things around innovation. We talk about all the good things. And I can tell you, innovation will not be the best thing after sliced bread, you know? So we just need to tell the regulator, look, there are certain gaps that we have in this particular solution. And, you know, we need to think about it together. How then do we address? We might not be able to solve the challenge 100%, but you can manage that risk that might emanate from your solution. And that is why we talk about openness. Openness is not about talking all good things about your solution. If you want to take it to scale, you have to be very open that these are some of the insights around the solution, and these are the challenges. And let us look at ways in which we can manage them. You need to have confidence and identify and ensure that there's management of innovation risks. That is something that is there. You always have to look at how then do you manage the innovation risk. And lastly is funding. The key thing is that the way we've looked at innovators have become perennial fundraisers. We have not really thought about at what point will my product become self-sustaining. In fact, some insurtechs or some innovators have created their solutions just for fundraising. You'll get that you are focusing your 90% of your time in thinking about need to develop a proposal for raising funds. You are only dedicating 10% on improving your product. So the customer kind of falls off the grid because you are always looking at who is the next big funder, how do I raise that particular funding. So you should have a strategy that if I'm going to get this particular funding, I'm going to dedicate this to build my product up to this level, so that it doesn't come to a point whereby it's fundraising after fundraising and fundraising up to that particular point that you realize that your customer and the solution is totally disconnected. So funding is really, really important. You must look at a sustainable way of raising funds that do not inhibit the growth of the solution that you are developing. Maybe lastly, we are not looking into developing one-hit wonders. Scaling requires focus. It requires commitment to your current model. And the key thing is that also it requires continuous innovation that is grounded in increasing the ideas, experimenting, challenging the status quo within your current operations, and basically acting fundamentally in new ways. And in this case, then it will kind of ensure that there is dual pressure of scaling innovation to achieve and demonstrate predictable income today. But the key thing is then, are you looking at exploring certain innovations for tomorrow that will create that particular niche for you? So it's all about balancing between what has been achieved today and demonstrate the impact that you've achieved today, and explore the uncertain innovations that tomorrow creates for you. So I'll stop there. And basically just to conclude is that, it's all about transformation. We need to look at new business models, look at moving beyond the comfort zone. It's not all about fundraising. It requires transformational leadership. And basically, you need to think about working relationship. The key thing is that innovation to scale is not equivalent to how many donors I've managed to bring on the table. And I think that is something that we really need to quickly kind of think about as innovators. As we develop our funding strategies, we need also to have a very clear niche that we don't spend 90% of our time in developing funding strategies, but definitely look at how then we innovate around being disruptive, around creating product centric and customer centric innovations to the future. I'll stop there and maybe I'll open it up for questions if there are any for the purpose of this discussion. Thank you.
So Elias, thank you very much for the session. And I have made sure I've worked very hard to make sure my camera is on. Yeah. But so as our participants prepare for their questions, I just want to talk a little bit around what I have learned from the presentation you've done to us on innovating to scale. So for me, the first thing is around what really is InsurTech, and what are we doing? Do we understand what we are doing? As people who are building solutions around insurance. So I really love the way you unpacked it and brought it out and, really opened up our minds around how we think when we're building. Then the second thing for me is around what exists for us. Where are the opportunities? Why are we in this space? Have we really thought about it? How are we going to make sure we address the opportunities? And that's what you called the InsurTech space. And what really gleaned out for me was the fact that we're actually talking about a younger and a younger audience. Yes, right now, insurance is run by, a much older group of people who own the insurance companies. But the truth of the matter is, who are their customers? Who are their future customers? Who is the one going around, recruiting for them customers? It's actually the youth who are recruiting new customers for them. It's the youth. They need the technology to be able to do what it is that they're doing. And it's the youth who they are selling to. So how do we make sure that whatever we are building is addressing that specific one? Then that bit of creating for the future, you can't stop now. It can't be like, the artists we've seen who are the one-hit wonders who come and then you never hear of them again. You have to think about the future. Whatever you're building, how is it going to address the future? And you really broke it into 3 areas where you talked about the front office, the middle office, and the back office. A bit of each of those little offices has been addressed, but actually one of the biggest pain points is the middle office, where nobody has touched or addressed that issue. And who is thinking about that? Has anybody done any research and really thought about that? Because everybody is focusing on the front, as you said, and an aspect of the back, but it has to be a whole ecosystem for it to make a difference and for you to have impact with what you're doing. And then there's the product versus the customer. I think this is a very, very delicate balance, And one must identify, how you're going to balance the two. It's not an easy one. I guess this is where the architecture comes in, where you need a proper CTO, where you need to immediately pick up where do you want to focus on, but you also must make sure you have an aspect of the other. So you may be very big on customer, but don't forget customer pushes products as well. So how do you make sure your customer is constantly happy? And then there's the strategy part, which I think was very important, and even as we go back and look at the slides, one has to think about, is there value in what you're creating? Are you innovating, and is there a needs analysis in whatever it is you're pushing out as an innovator? Then there's the bit I loved about the scaling principles, because these are principles that I think should be a Bible for any InsurTech or any innovator. You need to have your Bible with you. And every day as you're out there in the field, or you're, talking to your team and building a product and, ready to hit the market, are you in tandem with the principles that will guide your organization as you're thinking through what you do? So that's just my 2 lessons that I learned, just to make sure that, remember I said today I want to learn something, so I've learned a lot. So thank you very much for that presentation. And I'd like to open up for any questions from the participants. Just put up your hand, and then we can be able to have you ask your question. Any questions? Can you guys hear us? Should I reach out to anybody to tell us what they really like? Or somebody has raised their hand. Okay.
Yeah, Richard.
Okay, Richard, go ahead.
Oh, hi. Thank you very much. Elias, on the slide when you started, there was a point about availability of data as one of the indicators, I think, of growth of the insurtechs, right? But the challenge mostly that we have, one is the data is there, but it's in silos. So insurance companies have their own data ring-fenced in their areas. The regulators have their data ring-fenced in their areas, and then there are insurtechs who are coming in to I mean, to make life easier for, say, customers, and when you're focusing on the customer, right? It will be helpful to have this data shared between all these three parties, right? In some form, so that I mean, if you're focusing on the customer, it makes life easier for the customer, right? But I think up to currently that's not the case, and my question would be, how then do you address such a such a hurdle? And then the other thing I liked was the breakdown you gave of the back end, middle, and front office. What will be the kind of innovations to be done within the middle office?
Okay.
Yeah, those are my two questions.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. Data is still under different components. So you'll get that each and every person has his own data set. And ideally for you to kind of fulfill the puzzle or solve the puzzle, you kind of have to piece all these together. And there are ways in which we can start thinking about it. If you look at the insurance markets in Africa, there are only two big products. That's motor and health. And the question that we need to think about, do we have some data pools around those two elements? So if you look at health, then there's an element of the universal healthcare. There's an element of data that regardless of where you are, then there's that element that you'll always get that data somewhere. And this requires some form of policy. And the only way that this can be actualized, particularly on creating data pools and integrating and developing these data sets, is by industry collaboration. And that is something that is not existing because, you know, the insurtechs haven't really demonstrated the value that they can basically provide into the market. And basically, if you talk to any person on the street today about an innovative company, they'll only tell you that, oh, those guys that are looking into raising funds from abroad, you know, that will be the first answer that they'll tell you. They won't, in fact, if today you told them, like, if you go back to basically demonstrating your company, the first thing that you'll say that, okay, fine, we managed to raise this amount to do this. You don't start with, you know, we have developed this solution that has enabled us to really push this number of people towards resilience and towards that. The conversation is always what we see on the news is that, you know, we've raised this. So in terms of really policy and defining policy, will be by kind of indicating the need and ensuring that for us to solve that particular need, these actors have to be brought together. It requires a very strong policy guidance, and that is something that needs to be done. And if we can drive from the need analysis perspective, then we should be able to bring in all these three components together. And that requires what I mean by a lot of collaboration. Now, when you look at the middle office, there are three things in there. There's operations, there's issues around technology, and there's issues around information. So ideally, what we are talking about, information, also sits in the middle office, because even within the insurance companies or within people that do offer risk transfer solutions, you'll get that even information moving from the front office to the middle office to the back office is even disintegrated. So you get that the people that do serve in the middle office not even understand the coming from the front office. So even before we kind of solve the bigger puzzle, there's also need to ensure that we can be able to define an integrated mechanism within these three blocks that I've kind of spread out. And that's why most of the time when somebody is thinking about innovation, they'll think about, let me come up with a distributive innovation that basically addresses the customer-facing component, which is in front office. Then that basically breaks when that data start kind of trickling into the company. So operations, there's need to look at how then we can develop innovation around the operations of the company. How is the claims process? How is the verification process? What form of documentation do we really need? So all about the operationalization within the system. So it doesn't mean that once somebody purchases a policy using app on the front office, then once he's onboarded, then when this claim comes, then everything falls because it has gone to the middle office and the operation do not really connect to the front office. Then issues around information. How are we harnessing this data? Many companies sit on data that they have never even looked at. They have never even had insights on that data. And, that basically makes them basically address what I mentioned earlier, the latent pain. Because, this pain is not real. You don't discover it on the data that is coming to organization. So as long as that data comes in, it's kept. And that's the end of it. It's basically buried. I usually say information comes, it's buried. More information comes, and you keep burying all this information. And you'll never rediscover what the customers need. So information, data management, and data analytics becomes a very important component within the middle office. And it's something that really needs to be explored because that kind of gives insights to what customers are thinking, how the market environment is changing, what ecologies are being formed, and so forth. And lastly, we talked about operations, information, and technology. Office is where also technology sits. So technology has never evolved, and we really need to think about how then technology is evolved over time within the middle office component. So again, a lot of work really needs to be done within the middle office. So quite important elements within the middle office. Operations has to be streamlined. Information has to be looked at to inform for better decision making. And thirdly, we about technology. Technology has to be really impactful to even increase the efficiency of operations. There's a lot of leakage that do happen when it comes to the middle office.
Thank you very much for that clarification.
Thank you, Richard, for your question. Do we have any other questions? Okay, if there are no questions, any comments that we would like to share based out of the content that Elias has shared?
If I may, I have a question.
Okay,
hi,
please go ahead.
Hi, Elias. This
Hi.
is Dana Ellis. I have a question. So regarding insurtechs, so there has been a slowdown in funding, particularly VC capital, which is into fintech on the African continent, which is also in line with the global trends. And then in addition, you have a lot of the European donor organizations that typically have been providing funding to a lot of financial service providers or financial sector partners, including insurtechs on the African continent. And now the funding is actually being in a lot of reduced funding, also in terms of the philanthropic capital going on the African continent. So my question would be, what can we do collaboratively so that we can increase the flow of capital, private sector capital, into social investments in Africa and ensure that our capital is deployed as effectively and innovatively as possible for maximum social impact?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And, these are just opinions and it should be pegged to my personal opinion, right? So we need to change the narrative as an insurtech community, because most of the time, if you look at why ventures or innovators develop solutions, it's basically, and I mentioned this in my presentation, we should not be developing a solution for fundraising. I would say gimmick, that my solution is basically to fundraise. But the key component will be what solution am I developing for the continent, and that basically will change the way the local investors, particularly in Africa, will be looking at these particular solutions. They will not be fundraising driven insurtechs, but solution oriented insurtechs that even the local investors will see value of investing in them. We always know that there's always that element of really pushing for catalytic capital, and all that is really necessary. And the only way then we can prove that is by innovating to scale. So if these people will be able to see that the solution that we are developing will kind of be taken to scale, then they can easily be able to put their money to this particular risky, I would say, ventures that are looking into solving some of these particular solutions. So it's all about positioning. Continent, there's need to position what we are doing as a community, as insurtechs across Africa, and really push or pull investors within the African continent that are looking into newer channels for investment, be it blended finance, be it innovation vehicles that they want to put their money into. The key thing is that will this really give a return to those particular investors? And even if it basically means that they want to also provide catalytic capital whenever needed, then the key thing is that there's a way we really have to put the narrative outside there. It's quite unfortunate, and it's a reality. Then the funding has kind of declined given the situation in Ukraine. And basically that means that, we just have to look at newer ways of managing and solving for the problems that are currently existing within the continent. And the only way is basically making this channel to be attractive to the local investors, rather than local investors investing in what I call big cement companies and mining companies and all that. Yet we are talking about innovation and being the future. We are talking about a continent that has a median age of 19, that will be more connected to technology than really what we call hard investments or hard assets. Then we just have to really ensure that these investors see value investing in these channels, and that means that we have to change the narrative altogether, so that we are not viewed as more fundraising insurtechs, but more solution-oriented insurtechs that are looking into getting that particular fund to take it to scale.
Thank you. I agree with you.
And maybe just to add on to what you've said earlier around local funding, one of the BimaLab alumni, Oye, have actually done very well with that. I remember when Kevin was in one of our speaker series, he talked about how they've actually intentionally the market changed the narrative, because there's rather manage the narrative with regards to pursuing or attracting local funders and investors into Oye. So, that is actually how ideally we should be thinking, and not thinking about only the foreign funds, but what can we do from a local perspective to make this very attractive and to get the local investors, so that we're not caught up in a situation where we are stuck. Any other questions or comments from the audience? So I'd like us. Sorry?
I need another question before we end.
You need another question?
And if you can ask me what is my name, no problem.
All right. The challenge is thrown back to the participants. Any questions?
So one question from Nigeria, and then one question from Ghana, and then one question from the southern part of Africa. or a comment. What are they seeing in those regions? Sifiwa, I'll pick names now. I'll ask Sifiwa to go first, then Opiemi, then Gideon.
Thanks, Elias. Actually, the question that I had was around, I think one of the points that you touched on was how us as insurtechs, we should be innovating also, I think, in the lower end of the market. But part of the question, obviously, the lower end of the market, you would find that it takes very long to become profitable, and it may become an exercise where you are really burning cash instead of seeing the returns on your investment. Up to what point would you say is the safe point for you to say, I have now really reached the peak when it comes to innovating for the lower end market, which may not necessarily generate a large revenue unless you have very massive numbers in that market? Up to what point would you say you need to either sort of pull the plug on innovating into that particular space, or rather change course in terms of just changing direction in that level?
Yeah, that's a very difficult also, and a very good question. At what point do you realize that this thing is not working really? And you kind of realize that on my last bits of slides, I talked about getting that balance, whereby you have an impact-oriented solution, but also thinking about the future customer. And that basically means that you look at how then you balance that particular component out. It's usually very difficult to know that most of the time you'll just pull a plug when it was about just to take off, or you might have pulled a plug rightly. The key thing is that you always need to look at whether the kind of traction we are getting with the customers. So if you look at the profit as the key indicator, whereby my profitability should have moved by X, or my revenue should have moved by X as a success, then you might not be able to get the right indicators. The right indicator here is that how many customers am I influencing? How many customers are joining? How is the increase turning out to be? So if the customers are not really feeling the product and there's no growth on the customer side, because you see these products have very small margins, then it becomes a very difficult ball game if your indicator will be on the value of in terms of profits and revenue. It should be on the experiential value of the customers. Are customers saying positive things about the solution? Are they basically talking to other people about the solution? How many new customers are joining? Are you able to really attract some funding to push on the customer side, not basically to reduce or to increase your margins, but basically to increase the number of customers that are coming to purchase the product? So what I would say is that you really need to be careful on the indicator that you're using. It should not be on profitability, it should not be on the margins, but it should be on the number of customers, experiential component that they're talking about. So most of this time, it will be like the feedback will be more of talking to the customers and kind of getting to hear what they think about the solution if you are looking at that particular low income segment type of a customer.
Thanks, Elias.
So I'll go to Gideon, Ghana.
Yeah, hello, Elias.
Hello.
Yeah, good afternoon from Ghana. Unfortunately, I missed a chunk part of the whole presentation. I even communicated with Marianne because we're having internet issues here in Ghana. So I can't say much. I can't say anything at the moment because I want to refer to the video once we are done again. That's the issue we're facing.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Opeyemi.
So Elias, you wanted one more person.
Yeah, I'm calling Opeyemi.
Okay.
If you're on mute, it dropped off, and I don't know whether there's a connectivity issue. Or let me go to Jean, and then maybe we can close. I'll take it back to you, Laura. Jean.
Can I ask you anything? Like from Uganda? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
I just want to confirm that you said G.
Connection is not that great. So where is this guy? Where is right? So I think I'll take it back to you, Laura.
Okay.
I was about to call somebody, but I said, okay, fine. Let me not the chopping board.
Yeah, and I think it's a good idea that we stop now because the rains have been heavy, very heavy in Nairobi in the evening, and they're just starting. So before we also start talking about our internet connection issues, let's leave on a high note. I'd just like to say thank you very much, Elias, on behalf of all the participants. I think it's been a great session. We learned a lot. I shared my recap, and I hope everybody else also had some great recap to share. But before I close off and just talk about quickly about Thursday, I'd like to give you one minute to give us your parting shot.
Myself?
Yes, Elias, 1 minute for your parting shot.
Yeah, mine is so easy. My parting shot is let's innovate for the customer. And we shouldn't just focus on all the other stories. Let's innovate on the customer. Let's innovate on the product. All these other things will basically just fit in if we kind of get those two aligned. We'll get the regulator aligned. We'll get the investors aligned. We'll get the customers aligned. We'll get the insurance companies aligned, as long as we are able to get the rightful sweet spot for the customer and the product. Thank you.
Thank you, Elias. Yeah, so we've all had the parting shot from the expert who has just delivered his content. And finally, from the Telistic team, the implementing team, and this is by Tonya. We look forward to having all of you attend so that we can go through that assessment. And don't forget, you have the personalized office hours that will be happening in the whole month of October. Thank you all, and I wish you a wonderful evening. And I look forward to seeing all of you on Thursday. Goodbye.